everyone, and welcome into the Bear Down Buzz podcast. Isaac's still not with us, still on vacation, hopefully still having a great time, but he'll be back with us soon. But for now, it's just me, Eli Grimes, and Joe Grassano joining you here on this episode. The original plan earlier in the week was to release a post-game episode for the Titans-Bears game, and we did record, but we had some technical issues, and the recording did not sound up to par, to say the least, but we're going to try to fill you in one episode this week and then try to get back to our normal schedule next week is the plan. But yeah, and then we will do a pregame episode every week, kind of previewing the weekend's game ahead. But for now, Joe, I will toss it to you and kind of quickly, as we already have, but just for the listeners' sake, kind of give briefly your thoughts on that Titans game.
So, that's on the Titans game. A very brief overview is the offense obviously did not look great. Yeah, that was sad to see. We all figured that Caleb Williams would come out slinging, and also the Bears would have a good rushing attack. It's not what happened at all. The Bears only had a combined 14 carries from running backs from the ground. Well, I think it was 16 because Halas counts as a running back now. And they got like 50 yards in total from their running backs. They got 84 yards overall from everybody that carried the ball. That included DJ. I know DJ was definitely in there. Maybe Caleb had a scramble. Yeah, Caleb did have a 10-yard scramble. So that's kind of in there too. And then our defense, the first half, didn't look great. They couldn't really stop the run. And Eberflus didn't send much pressure in blitzes like he did in the preseason. I mean, he did send one blitz in the first half, but it wasn't what I would have liked to see on important downs. And then in the second half, the defense played a lot better. They sent two blitzes, or at least two pressures that were more than just four people, which is nice to see. And they definitely did make adjustments. So they were able to completely shut down the Titans offense and actually got a pick six at the end of the game that helped us win. And then our special teams played really well. Andrew Carter had a couple good punt and kickoff returns. And yeah, your special teams and defense plays out of their mind, even when your offense doesn't play well. That's a good formula to win. Yeah. What are your overall thoughts on the game?
I'm completely with you on your thought process there. Some of the negatives from the offense, as you kind of mentioned, was just that interior offensive line. As I kind of mentioned beforehand, T'Vondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons were a problem. Obviously, we both expected Simmons to be an issue for our interior, but T'Vondre Sweat, for a rookie to be as dominant as he was in that game, was a complete surprise to me. I knew he was a stud in college, but usually those defensive prospects take some time to get their feet wet in the NFL, but it took him no time at all. He looked like a seasoned vet against our interior. So that will be something to pay attention to for this Bears offense in the coming weeks to see if they can kind of gel together. Caleb, we did agree there were a few plays from him to where you would like to see him improve, such as that scramble sack to where he lost about 20 yards. You don't want to see that. There were a few overthrows here and there for him. It is just week one, so I can say we're probably both confident that he's only going to get better week in and week out. The dropped touchdown pass by Keenan Allen, that one hurt, but he's a veteran and he doesn't drop that pass often, so I wouldn't believe it to be a recurring problem throughout this year. But those are kind of some of my takeaways for the Bears offense. And then again, defensively, as I mentioned, that interior defensive line for Tennessee was super impressive. So that's kind of my overall takeaway from that game.
One last takeaway, which this is a big one. Coleman Shelton did not look good at all. He got blown up on a couple plays. He went to triple team Jeffrey Simmons instead of staying home in the center, which led to another sack of Caleb Williams, which you never want to see. Just stay where you're supposed to be. I know Jeffrey Simmons is dangerous, but he was already getting handled. That sack would have never happened with Harold Landry if Coleman stays where he's supposed to be. Now, on one of the plays that he got bulldozed, he did trip over an offensive lineman, but you can only see that if you watch the film like 5 or 6 times back to back to back. If you don't have a keen eye for that, it just looks like it gets bulldozed and pushed over, which is never good. You don't want that to happen. Now, we don't know if they just played a really good front or Sheldon just doesn't have it anymore. We'll see that going forward. I'm gonna hopefully lean this that they played a really good interior and we'll see that over the next 17 games or 16 games. That was the last piece that I wanted to mention from that game.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's going to be something worth paying attention to throughout this year. And personally, I do believe that that Tennessee front is going to be one of the better ones we face this entire season because it was impressive and it was again surprising to say the least that they had a as good of an interior defensive line as they did. But that kind of wraps up, I believe, most of what we have to say about that Titans game. Obviously, a lot to improve on the offensive side of the ball. Defense picked up where it did last year, but going into week 2, the Bears, the Chicago Bears, your Chicago Bears, have a Sunday night football matchup against the Houston Texans with C.J. Stroud and the new additions on offense that Houston has made in the offseason. Joe, I know we mentioned beforehand some of our thoughts, but just give me some of your thoughts on this matchup, maybe takeaways and kind of game plan for week 2 against the Houston Texans on Sunday Night Football.
Okay. So offensively, like you mentioned, the Texans have a bunch of weapons. They went out and traded for Stephon Diggs in the offseason. They the final the final designation for what happened with Mixon was they traded for him with the Bengals. Even though the Bengals cut him, but I think what happened was before he finished getting before the cut was finalized, the Texans were like, we'll send you a pick for him instead of you just cutting him, and they got Mixon. Mixon last week had, I think, the second best game of his career. He rushed for 159 yards on 30 carries and got a touchdown. So we're gonna have to definitely take care of Mixon on Sunday night. That's even more important because the Bears didn't really have, like I said earlier, they didn't really have a good rush defense in the first half. So they need to have a good rush defense the whole game if they want to have any chance of stopping Mixon. Because if you stop Mixon, you just leave the Texans to throw the ball with Stroud. Yes, Stroud's great, but the Bears secondary is also really good. And it's even though Stroud, you know, is a superstar, going up against a top level secondary is still going to be difficult for him. So if the Bears stop the run, it favors really well for their defense. The thing is, like, I don't know what to say for who to cover their Texas receivers because, like, you want Jalen on their best receiver, which is Nico Collins, but like Stephen Diggs is also still really good. So I think the best option there is to like rotate the corners. I know we play cover 2, so no one's really ever matched up on someone whole game. But yeah, I don't. That's kind of my general thoughts on the Texans.
I will say on the run defense aspect of it, I do completely agree with you because, I'm a big Tony Pollard fan, and I think Pollard and Spears is a good 1-2 punch for that Tennessee offense that we faced last week. But Joe Mixon, I think, is a tier above, in my opinion, that duo, as was made obvious last week against the Colts, because averaging over 5 yards a carry is not an easy feat in the NFL. But he was able to do that against a pretty good front in Indianapolis. I think we are somewhat even, I would say, defensively on the front line. I would probably give Indianapolis the edge at first, but we'll see. We had a good week 1 with our defensive front, so we'll see how that develops. But run defense will be a big aspect of this defensively because Joe Mixon can take a game over. We kind of saw Tony Pollard do that a few times in that Tennessee game. But I do agree, receiver wise, that it's going to be difficult to cover every weapon on this field. And I do think we might see a little bit more of nickel packages. So I think we'll see Kyler Gordon in the game more often than we did this past week because I think the game plan to beat Stroud, the guy is a completion percentage master. Obviously, it's only year 2 for him, but 75% completion percentage in that game against Indianapolis. That is incredible. 24 of 32, I believe, over 200 yards. And he distributed the ball to 8 different receivers, I believe, or 8 different targets is the better way to put it. So I think, as you've kind of wanted this defense to do, I think we're going to see a lot more blitz packages this week. So that's a plus. Obviously, just for football fans to see blitzes in general is just a good time, but I think it's a good idea to kind of get up in CJ Stroud's face and make him make mistakes. He doesn't do it very often, but in the few bad games he's had in his career, he's been pressured and he's made bad decisions. So I think that's the game plan defensively for us, is to bring as much pressure as we can and let our secondary do the work that we kind of saw them do in week one.
On the offensive side of the ball, the biggest thing the Bears need to do is establish the run. They were horrible at that last week. Like we said earlier, they only had a combined 16 carries for like 50 yards with their running backs. I think you need to use Swift a lot more. I mean, you pay the dude, and I know they like Valus a lot, but like keep Valus off the field and use Swift and Herbert for the most part. Herbert's good. Even though he didn't have the best season last year, he was hurt. He's healthy now, and he's a good running back. He might not be good between the tackles, but he's a good running back. Use Swift and Herbert, maybe give them like a 15-10 split, something like that. And even if the running game isn't working straight away, continue to pound the rock, because we saw what happened last week with Caleb Williams and with the Norton game. That offense did not work. Yes, Williams missed throws and there was a couple drops, but overall that offense did not look good. You need to run the ball to set up Caleb Williams play action game and to set up just the defenders coming down. And also, you do need to set up a couple deep shots on the Texans, because they allowed like 3 or 4 deep shots against the Colts. So run the ball and throw deep. I will say this: the one thing about running the ball though is the Texans were able to keep Jonathan Taylor to 48 yards, if I'm not mistaken, last week, which, Taylor's one of the best running backs in the league. Yeah, he was hurt last year and he didn't play a lot, but he did also rush for 188 yards in their week 18 matchup last year. So the fact that they were able to keep him under 100 yards and more so under 50 yards this time around is very impressive. That's why the Bears just need to keep going at the run game, even if it's not working out, because you just need to challenge. You just need to set it up for Caleb Williams.
And I think establishing the run, like you kind of mentioned, is the key to potential success in this game. If you look at this Texans defensive roster, their strength on the defensive line is in their defensive ends. Obviously, Will Anderson Jr. had a great rookie year last year. Daniil Hunter from Minnesota, the acquisition there, he made his presence felt in that week one matchup against the Colts. But then you look at the interior, and Mario Edwards Jr., who we're kind of familiar with in past years, is at the left defensive tackle spot. And then Olorunso Fatukasi, if I'm saying that right. That I wouldn't say it's a weak spot, but if there was one on this Texans defensive front, it is the interior. So getting Khalil Herbert involved in the run game as kind of the 1-2 punch to DeAndre Swift, and getting DeAndre Swift on the perimeter, if that's what we want to do in the passing game, because that is what he's good at. He's good after the catch. And I would argue, if we're talking about keeping Velus Jones inactive, which I think is probably for the best moving forward, why not even bring in Roschon Johnson as that third back to kind of give us an extra boost there and let our backs kind of have that rest if we're going to be run heavy this week? Because Roschon Johnson in limited action last year, I don't know about you, but I was really impressed in the time that he was on the field, even as a pass catching back. But that guy is a monster after contact, so I think it would be wise to make him active. Now, I'm not predicting that he's going to be active, but I think it would be a good idea to have 3 backs active for this game, and then to just bench Velus, because we saw it last week, and we've seen it in the years prior that he's been on this team. It's just costly mistakes, and regardless, I think bringing in Roschon as that third back instead of Velus, regardless of how many yards he can get, how quick he is, that kind of thing, we cannot afford mistakes, especially against a team like Houston, who is going to capitalize off of every mistake.
Totally agree with you. I'm By the way, we're in agreement with the Valus thing. I know he's, like you said, he's very explosive, but like he had that cost of turnover with the muff punt, not muff punt, but the muff kickoff, and he kicked the ball 15 yards forward, which allowed the Tennessee to recover it. I mean, yes, turnover is mostly on Valus. If you listen to a little bit more in-depth breakdown, it's also kind of on Khalil Herbert, because he picked up field instead of looking if Valus caught the ball. But I mean, it's kind of a good thing that he did pick up field because Bayless kicked the ball 15 yards forward. But that may not have happened if Herbert saw. So you never know. But still, Bayless, made that one big mistake. I don't think he's going to be on kickoff duties. If he's active, I don't think he's going to be on kickoff duties. He's just going to be a running back. And like you said, Roshan's just the better, more physical back. Bayless was a physical back in the preseason, but it's a different game now that he's going against starters. Roshan's in my mind, in your opinion, just better doing that. He showed himself really well last year. So another big key to this game is going to be field position. I mean, I guess you could say that's key every week, but especially against the Texans because they have a prolific offensive Stroud and they can move the ball. Last week, the Texans had 3 drives start from inside their 20. Two of them that they punted. One of the punts was a block punt that ended up getting returned for a touchdown. Then the other one was a touchdown drive. So 33% of the time they scored a touchdown, which isn't like great. So that shows that if the Bears couldn't pin them within their 20, the Texans, even though it's a small sample size, will have trouble getting on the field. And I guess you could say that from many teams. But the Bears didn't do that last week against the Titans, like at all. The two closest punts they had were the 20. The drive the Titans started on their own 20. The Bears ended up forcing a punt and then did get the ball in post territory after the punt. And then this drive the Titans started at the 21. They did end up going down and scoring a touchdown. So again, it's a small sample size. It's only one game and it's only 2 punts, but still, obviously the field position battle is very important.
I think another aspect to this game that the Titans kind of did win last week was the time of possession. I think it's going to be huge against this Houston offense that, we've seen it in action multiple times with CJ Stroud is prolific. So keeping them off the field by, as we mentioned earlier, getting that run game going and having these long extended drives, preferably scoring drives to put this Houston offense to keep them off the field, that's going to be key to success as well.
Moving on from keys to victory, there are a couple notable injuries that happened. We mentioned this in the episode that didn't actually get released, but Rome Odunze got hurt on Sunday on a Velus Jones run. DeAndre Carter blocked somebody into Rome's legs. He has a grade 1 MCL sprain, and today Eberflus said he's day to day, so he may or may not play Sunday. And then Keenan Allen also hurt his foot in the game on Sunday. He didn't practice today. He might play Sunday. He should play Sunday, but he's a vet, so who knows? I hope he play. Obviously, we all hope he plays. We hope he's fine. Then DJ Moore, we haven't heard anything after what happened on Sunday. He got hurt Sunday, but he did end up coming back in the game, and he's, from what we know, not doesn't have any ailing things going on. And then Demarcus Walker apparently was out of practice today with a foot injury.
Yeah, I think notably the biggest one obviously is Rome, and I think it would be best for them to just be precautious this week and keep him out of a game that we're not favored in, and a lot of people are counting us out. I still think we still have a shot, but with a game like this, I think it's best to keep Rome out for a week and kind of let him heal up. I think DJ's okay from everything that we've seen, and then as you mentioned, Keenan, from what it sounded like, it was just a vet rest day, but it also is something to keep an eye on throughout the rest of the week, throughout practice, and we'll see the injury reports obviously every day released by the Bears. And then Demarcus Walker, I think, could be a bigger concern than we think because he was a pretty good part of that rotation against Tennessee. So hopefully he can rest up as well and kind of be ready for that Sunday night matchup.
I definitely agree with you with Romanidze. Like, yes, we want him to play. He was a top pick, but like he's young. He has a long career to go. Do not want to get him hurt more. And never want to say this, but like if you play him, he might tear his whole MCL and be out the year and then have to rehab it. And he might not be as explosive when he comes back. Like you just don't want that to happen. So sit him this week, sit him next week if you need to. Already not favored to win this week. So like you said, I think the Bears do have a puncher's chance because it's NFL, anything can happen. I didn't have them winning anyways going into this. Like, let's start the season and have them winning this game. Nothing's changed. I don't have them winning this game. I would love them to win this game and shock everybody. I don't think it's going to happen, but just don't play. I think don't play Rome this week. That would leave DeAndre Carter, or maybe if they call up Colin Johnson from the press squad as the third receiver. It's probably going to be Carter though, because they like Carter. Carter can play every position at wide receiver, and he knows the playbook very well because he was with the receivers coach, not the playbook, but he like knows the receivers coach knows him very well from other stops. So I think it'll be Carter as wide receiver 3, which you know it's okay. He did have a missed ball last week. Wasn't his fault, but still.
I think I would be okay with either Carter or Scott. Obviously, Carter has more experience playing at wide receiver in the NFL and just special teams in general, but really I wouldn't mind either option there because I think Scott still does have a little bit left to prove. And Matt Eberflus talked about opportunity this week with whoever is going to be there at the wide receiver 3 slot. So I would be okay with either Carter or Scott being at that wide receiver 3 spot.
I honestly forgot about Scott.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if Keenan doesn't play, they're both definitely going to play. The Bears will call up somebody from the practice squad too, probably. I think we all want Keenan to play. I think Keenan will play, so it'll only be Carter or Scott. Maybe it's a rotation between the two, which could that also happen, which is fine with me. Whoever plays better should then cement themselves as a wide receiver 4 going forward. But yeah, with that, let's do game predictions.
So I think we both agree here that we are the massive underdog in this one. But I do think we are going to see some level of offense from this Bears squad that we did not see in week 1. I think, like you mentioned, we're going to get the run game going. So give me over on the Bears rushing yards, over 100 rushing yards in this matchup. I think we're going to see a great day from DeAndre Swift. And for the hell of it, why not say Bears pull off the huge upset on Sunday Night Football, Bears 27, Houston 24.
That score prediction is funny because it's actually what I predicted before the Bears started, but for the Texans, 27-24. The season started for the Texans, 27-24. I think I'm going to keep it. I would love it if this other way, the Bears win 27-24. I just think the Texans have the better – I don't know if they have the better overall team. Right now, they're the more proven quarterback, which might not be the case by the end of this year or next year. But right now, they're the better, more proven quarterback. I think Stroud's going to have a good game. I think the Texans are going to have a good game. I think the Bears will also have a good game. I think they'll fix their offense from last week. I also really like your prop bet of DeAndre Swift going over 100 rushing yards. That does need to happen if the Bears are going to win. So if that doesn't happen, I think my prediction is more likely. But if that does happen, I like your prediction a lot more.
And I appreciate it. I think you kind of spelled it out throughout this episode. The key to success in this Bears matchup is running the ball. So DeAndre Swift is at the forefront of that. But as we kind of also mentioned, having that 3-headed monster in the Bears backfield, I think is going to be the, once again, key to success if we're going to pull off this upset against the Texans.
That's going to do it for this episode of the Bear Down Buzz podcast. Thank you all for listening. Next week, we will be back on Tuesday with an episode with Isaac. I'm like 90% sure that he'll be back by then. So we'll see you guys on Tuesday next week.